story about destiny and luck. Once there were two brothers, and they lived together on a farm estate, and they had a very prosperous life. However, the younger brother spent most of his time drinking, eating, and making merry, whilst the older brother spent all of his time toiling on the farm, in the fields, and looking after the livestock. After a little while, the older brother got a bit fed up with this and said to the younger brother, I am fed up with this. And so he requested that the farm be split in two. Half the livestock go to the older brother, half the livestock go to the younger brother, and also the fields and all of the resources. The younger brother was bereft. He loved his older brother dearly. He said, brother, don't do this, don't change things. We have such a great life. But the older brother was adamant, and so the farm was split. The younger brother employed people to run his farm, people who knew about farming. He continued to drink, eat, and make merry, and lived a very prosperous life. The older brother took his half of the farm and toiled in the fields and looking after the livestock, and was blighted by nothing but bad luck, to the extent that he lost all of his livestock to disease, and he lost all of his crops from his field to fire and pestilence. He was so poor that one day he decided he would venture to visit his younger brother and ask for help. On his way to his younger brother's house, he passed by a beautiful field of golden corn blowing in the breeze. And by the field was a beautiful woman dressed all in white, looking a little bit ethereal. And he asked her, Madam, who owns this beautiful field of corn? And she said, But isn't that obvious? It is your brother. Well, the older brother was a little bit aghast, and he said, And what are you to my younger brother? And she said, I am his luck. Oh, the older brother scratched his head. And where is my luck? He asked. Oh, goodness, said the beautiful woman. She lives over in the forest, deep in the forest. She's pretty old, and she's a bit of an old hag, actually, and she's a bit cantankerous. That's your luck. My rotten luck, said the older brother, and continued to his younger brother's house. He clocked on the door, and the younger brother cried with grief when he saw what his older brother had become. And he fetched clothes, and he fetched food, and he fetched wine, and he fetched money, and he made sure that his older brother was fine and well looked after. After a few days, the older brother decided that it was time for him to leave and go and find his luck. So he bade his younger brother farewell and thanked him dearly for his kindness, and walked towards the forest. He saw the beautiful ethereal lady again, and said, Where again will I find my luck? And she pointed in the direction of the forest. Right in the middle, she said. Well, it took the older brother quite some days to get to the middle of the forest, but eventually, underneath an old tree, he found a sleeping old hag of a woman. He took his walking staff and tapped her on the back to wake her up. She woke up really slowly and tried to focus on who had been tapping her on the back. And eventually she focused on the older brother and smiled. "Ah, hello," she said, and looked him up and down with his nice new clothes. "Was lucky I was asleep," she said. "Otherwise I'd have had those off you in a jiffy." "Ah," said the older brother, "you must be my rotten luck." She smiled. "Yes, indeed." "Ah, and why have you been given to me?" said the old brother. "Ah, destiny has given me to you," said the hag. "And where do I find destiny?" inquired the brother. And the old hag pointed to a beautiful castle up on the highest mountain above the forest. "That is where destiny lives," she said. "But if you're planning on going and finding and talking to destiny, here are some rules. Firstly, don't speak to destiny until he speaks to you. Secondly, just do as destiny does. So follow him about and do what he's doing, and it'll be fine. And eventually he will speak to you." "Fine, fine," said the older brother, and off he went. It took him days just to get to underneath the mountain. It was such a long journey. And he toiled up the mountain. There was a bit of a path, but he toiled up the mountain. And eventually he got to this beautiful castle. Bosh, 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 he went on the door. And the door was opened. Well, it was opulent. There were tapestries on the walls, there were golden plates, and a sumptuous table full of food and servants and everything you could ever want. Fountain in the middle of a lovely courtyard. It was glorious. And there, about to start his dinner, was Destiny, thinking about what the hag had told him. The older brother went and sat next to Destiny. A plate of food was brought, very nice food too, and the two of them, in silence, began to eat. Once dinner was over, Destiny retired to his bedchamber, followed by the older brother. Destiny got into bed, and the older brother went to sleep on the floor by the fire, but it was perfectly comfortable. In the middle of the night, there was an enormous commotion, and this terrible voice rang out and said, "Many souls have been born tonight, Destiny. They await your gifts." And Destiny rose as though in a trance, and he walked towards a beautiful chest inlaid with gold and silver and opened it and said, "I give to those souls what I enjoy today." And he tossed diamonds and rubies and emeralds and gold left and right, saying, "So as I am now, so they will be." Continued throwing all this jewels and gold everywhere, and eventually he shut the case and went back to bed. And the older brother went back to sleep. In the morning, the older brother woke, but he was in a different place, in a different house. The house was smaller, still perfectly nice, but not as big. And dinner was not as opulent. Plenty of bread and meat and wine and beer, but no golden plates. And after dinner followed the same routine. Destiny went to bed, and the older brother went to sleep by a slightly smaller fire, and not such a nice fireplace. And in the night this terrible voice spoke once again. Many souls have been born tonight. They await your gifts, Destiny. And Destiny woke as though in a trance and went to a smaller chest, opened the chest, and said, I give to those souls what I enjoy today. So as I am now, so they will be. And tossed silver coins left and right. And then went back to bed and went back to sleep. The older brother also went back to sleep, and in the morning he woke. The house had shrunk again. The fire was not quite as warm. And they went through the whole day once again, and dinner this time was bread, some meat, and some ale. And they both went to bed, the older brother by the fire, Destiny in his bed, and that same terrible voice rang out in the night. And this time Destiny opened a small chest and tossed copper coins left and right, saying, I give to those souls the bounty I enjoy today. So as I am now, so they will be. A fourth night, and the older brother had woken in a hovel. Destiny was already up, digging the fields, scratching around in the fields for some turnips to eat. And at night, when they went to bed, all that Destiny had to throw left and right were some pebbles and some very, very meagre coins. But still saying, I give to the souls the bounty I receive today. As I am now, so they will be. And the older brother and Destiny were very poor that night. In the morning, the older brother woke back in the big castle. Destiny and the older brother sat down for breakfast. Destiny looked at the older brother. What brings you here? Said he. I want to know why I have such rotten luck, said the older brother. Well, it's very easy to see. You were born on a day when the bounty was the same as when we were living in the hovel, and all I could give to you were pebbles and some coins. What that means is that you were born into poverty, and your life will be that way. Your brother, on the other hand, was born when I was living in this castle, and he will be wealthy all his days. I gave him jewels and gold coins. Well, the older brother was a bit crestfallen. So what am I to do? Said he. Destiny thought. Well, he said, your younger brother has a neighbour, and she is a widow and looking for a husband. And she was born at the same time as your younger brother. So she enjoys wealth and prosperity, despite the fact that she's a widow. Why don't you ask if you could be introduced to her, and maybe she could become your wife? Because if you surround yourself with people who were born when the castle was created, then you too can enjoy an opulent life. The older brother thought, that's a good idea, I'll go and do it. And so he left the castle, bade Destiny farewell, walked down the mountain, through the forest, and back to his brother's house. And he told his brother what had happened and what he'd experienced. And he said to his brother, you have a neighbour who is a widow and maybe is looking for a husband who works hard and is loyal and diligent as I, would you make an introduction? Well, the younger brother did, and the older brother and the neighbour were married. But the older brother always had in his mind the last thing that Destiny had said to him. Destiny said, look, you just have to realise that if you are married to somebody who is luckier than you, then you have to understand and you have to acknowledge that your luck is actually their luck, and everything that you have belongs to them, and you're sharing it. And the older brother had nodded and acknowledged this. So he married the widow from next door, and they lived a very opulent life. They grew wealthy. One day, the older brother was tending his fields. He was a hard-working fellow. And a stranger passed by and said to him, "Wow, look at all this beautiful corn. Look at all this beautiful wheat. You've done so well. These fields must belong to you." And the older brother said proudly, "Yes, yes, they do. They belong to me." And immediately his words had left his lips. A small fire broke out in the corner of one of the fields and spread really quickly. It started to race towards the house. Everything was at risk. And the older brother remembered what Destiny had told him and raced after the stranger. "Wait, wait, wait," he said. "Actually, that's completely wrong. Everything you see belongs to my wife." Immediately as he'd said that, the fire went out and everything was restored. Interesting. And so the older brother lived with his wife happily in their new farm next to the younger brother. And that's the end of the story. It's kind of interesting. It doesn't have your usual happy ending, but it's a story with a message. We can't do everything alone, and sometimes we need to surround ourselves with people who have gifts. Have a great day.